COVID-19 pandemic has been life-changing for all of us. Some people have made the decision to get vaccinated, and some people made the decision not to get vaccinated. It is no judgment. It's your right and your choice. We all know individuals who have unfortunately lost their lives to the COVID-19 virus. Today, I will be speaking with Lakisha, who lost her mother to the COVID-19 virus, and it forever changed her life. Welcome to the show, Keisha. When did your mom get sick, and when did you know she was suffering from the COVID-19 virus?
Okay, so that takes me back to April. My mom started experiencing symptoms shortly after I arrived back from Puerto Rico. So we're talking about around, I want to say, April the 10th. Well, actually, April the 10th was when she was admitted. But prior to that, the 10th, that week, she was experiencing symptoms like fatigue, a cough, almost like flu-like, and she was trying some over-the-counter medications, but it wasn't anything that sent a radar to her like, oh my gosh, I have COVID. She thought it was something simply that she could treat as she's done in the past, like with over-the-counter medications, and that's basically what she did all of that week. But she just didn't seem to be getting better.
And that was April 10th, you said?
So April the 10th was the day she was admitted to the hospital. So I'm going to say probably from about the 6th all the way up until the date that she was admitted. So from the 6th, 7th, 8th, she was experiencing symptoms. She was still actually going to work because it wasn't anything that kind of made her or put on her radar, hey, I may have COVID. She wasn't running any fevers. She just had like flu-like symptoms. And when I say flu-like, I mean like, occasional diarrhea, coughing, cold and things like that. But it wasn't anything like she didn't have loss of taste of smell at that time. She wasn't experiencing any difficulty with breathing. So I think she more or less thought it was something like flu or common cold.
Okay. So now when she's admitted to the hospital on April 10th, at that time she was able to speak to you on the phone, call you on the phone.
Right. So actually on April the 10th, I arrived to her home. And I went over there just to deliver her some groceries and still was trying to prompt her to go to the hospital. Because, it had been almost a week at that point and she showed no signs of getting better. So I decided to go over and just take her like a care package, juices, vitamin C, things that you would take for a cold. And what wound up happening is while I was there delivering the groceries, she actually got up to use the bathroom and passed out.
Oh, no.
So it was during that time that I made a decision to have my son call 911, and she was taken to the hospital via ambulance.
Okay.
Once she got to the hospital, we explained what happened. She was walking to the bathroom, and I couldn't get in the ambulance with her. I followed the ambulance in my car. They basically would not let me go back, and the nurse said, I can't. It's protocol because she's passed out, because she's had these symptoms. We have to clear her for COVID. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, that's not a problem. I'll be back there in no time.
Right.
So the nurse came back out maybe about an hour later. I'm sitting in the waiting room in the hospital. And I said, hey, I've been waiting here about an hour. Can I go back with my mom? So then she followed up and she came out and she said, no, unfortunately, your mom tested positive for COVID. Is anybody else in the house sick or, experiencing any symptoms? And I thought to myself, no, like I just literally came back from a trip from Puerto Rico. So I was okay. But all of us had to then go get tested for COVID, and we did. And everyone else in the household or that had contact with my mom. She carpooled with people. They were all negative. I tested positive for COVID. So, as well, unfortunately.
Right. Now, when your mom passed out, did she came to before the paramedics came to the house?
She came to, I went in to the bathroom while she was, laid out on the floor, administered like a cold compress. I called her name a few times, helped her to kind of sit up. I didn't want her to stand up completely. And then I kind of assisted with her, like transferring to like a standing up position. And it took her a while to come to. And she didn't want to go to the hospital. And I said, Mom, you've passed out and you hit your head. And my son was actually the one that initially found her. He was yelling, Grandma, are you okay? Hey, you okay? And it was me hearing him say that, that kind of prompted me to like, something's wrong. And I ran in, and that's when she was like on the floor. But it took her some time to regain consciousness. The ambulance came in. They asked her a series of questions, and then just proceeded to take her to the hospital. And at that point, she was vocal. She was expressing her needs, her wants. She was adamant about, hey, I'll carry my purse, so she was cognitive and she was well aware of what was going on. And she was at that point agreeable. She didn't want to go to the hospital at first, but when I expressed concerns about the fall and I didn't know if she had a head injury, she then was agreeable to get in the ambulance and go.
Okay. So you said April 10th was when she was admitted. The nurse came back and said she tested positive for COVID. So now you have to go home. So you're talking to your mom on the phone every day. When did it take its turn? After April 10th?
I'm sorry. When did it take a turn?
Yes.
So I would say, that's funny that you asked. So she was supposed to be discharged on the 23rd. Unfortunately, so we were expecting her to be discharged. She was going through a series of medications, all of the therapeutic processes that they put in place for COVID patients, all of the medications, all of the treatments. She was on a high flow oxygen. And we were anticipating that she would be discharged on the 23rd. But unfortunately, the weekend that followed the 23rd, things just took a turn for the worse. And she was actually intubated on April the 24th. So she presented to the hospital April the 10th, but then on April the 24th, which was over the weekend, apparently the same scenario, she was not getting enough oxygen. And that was like an ongoing process, and it's very common for individuals that have COVID-19. She, was disoriented. She was on multiple medications. They explained she was trying to remove, the apparatus that she had on, and they immediately had to intubate her because her oxygen levels dropped so significantly low. So the 24th, she was intubated, and my mother just, at that point, they said that she could hear us. But at that point, I could no longer communicate with her. I was FaceTiming my mom every day because she also had an iPhone. So from April the 10th through, I would say pretty much April the 23rd, I was able to talk to her. She was telling me what she had for lunch. She was telling me about her quality of care. She was excited about being discharged because she anticipated leaving on the 23rd. She was very aware of what was going on. She was consenting to her own medical treatment. But then, like I said, unfortunately, on the 24th, she was intubated and my mom just never recovered. At that point, I could not talk with her. I could not really communicate with her. I would see her on Zoom. The nurses were, really great about scheduling Zoom meetings with me, but she could not communicate with me. At that
That
point,
was
she could
like
not.
mind-boggling.
It
That
was
he,
it was
well,
very much so.
yeah,
And
my
I
mom's
couldn't,
gonna be released. And
right.
then all of a sudden, did you get a call from the doctor that said, listen, things have taken a turn for the worst. We had to put your mom on a ventilator. Did they call and tell you that?
So I didn't get a call until after, which was really, it infuriated me. I got a call from the pulmonary specialist who wasn't the regular pulmonary doctor that she was seeing. This was a physician that was working over the weekend. And I asked him, I said, first of all, I wanted to be notified if it got to the point where treatment drastically changed and she required intubation. He explained to me, because of the severity and the rate that she was losing oxygen, there was no time. So it was like an emergency protocol that they had to follow. They had to immediately go in and intubate her and contact me after. He said there was really no time. And he did explain that to me. And it really did. It took me some days to process, because again, there's this vibrant person who was in control of everything and their care, was looking forward to leaving the hospital and going home. She was contacting and talking to multiple people that was following up on her care. And then within the matter of a day, everything just changed.
And I heard that when I've spoken to a lot of doctors at Temple and nurses at Temple,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, like in the beginning of COVID, people were coming in, but they had already been sick for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And when they would see them, they said
Mm-hmm.
in the matter of hours, their whole condition just changed.
Right.
But that was in the beginning. And they just didn't know. So
right.
At April 24th, your mom is on a ventilator.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take from April 24th for the situation to change for the worse again?
Right. So then once she was intubated, it just seemed like the worst seemed to follow. Following intubation, I was then informed she was on a neuro intensive care unit. I was then informed by her specialist doctor that she had a stroke. She had a massive stroke. So following intubation, and again, clotting is common with COVID-19. She had she had several strokes. Then following that, she started having, just her system started to shut down. And she had to be put on dialysis. First, it was more of a non-invasive type of dialysis, because they did not really want to. My mother was in such a fragile state that they didn't want to put the line in that they typically would put in for a dialysis patient. So they wanted to try the least invasive route. And so she was receiving dialysis in the least invasive route, and she was still continuing to clot. So then I had to basically consent for her to receive dialysis, the most invasive route, because the other method was not working. And that seemed to be working short term. And then there were complications with dialysis where she continued to clot. And it just was not effective for her. She had another stroke. They'd had, several CAT scans and MRIs, and the things just got progressively worse.
So I can tell that you and your mom were very close.
Yes, she was my best friend.
And to be able to just have to be home and not by your mom's side, to hold her hand, to rub her head, I know that was extremely difficult for you.
It was very hard. It was frustrating. And I was trying. I was trying every conversation that I had with a social worker, with a doctor. My question always was, can I come see my mom? Can I get in there to see my mom? I just want to hold my mother's hand. I want to talk to her. I want to let her know that it was okay. But I mean, the protocol is tough. It's extremely tough for family members and friends and loved ones, but it really is a protocol that is to keep people safe. And COVID-19 is a serious illness, is extremely serious, but that was really frustrating because I had no control. I really felt like I had no control and I couldn't change the circumstances
Right.
at all.
Right. So unfortunately, your mother lost her fight to the
She
COVID-19.
did. Yes, she did. She lost her fight May the 13th. And at that point, I was able to come in. I hear other stories where some loved ones didn't even get to do that. I was able to, social workers contacted me and she said, hey, her condition has really gotten progressively worse. She's now considered basically end of life. Dialysis, we're going to have to stop that because she's continuing to clot. And it's just really not helping her. And so the social worker allowed me to come there and hold her hand. It was myself and my son Kamar, and we held my mother's hand while they removed her off the ventilator. I talked to my mother and told her how much I loved her. I called various relatives so that they could talk to her and tell her that they loved her. And I told my mom it was okay, that I would be okay. And that was just it. She just, I could basically see her vital signs rapidly decline. And then she was, basically announced to be, dead, deceased.
And that was shortly after they took her off the ventilator?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Now, tell me about the service that you had for your mom. Did the COVID-19 restrictions rob you of having the homegoing service that you wanted to for your mother?
So I'd never planned a funeral before, and I was calling various places. I had, extended family that also provided me resources that were very helpful in that process. And when I was calling around, a number of places had limitations on the amount of people that you could have there. And it's understandable because, we were in a pandemic. There were restrictions. Some funeral homes said, you couldn't have more than 20 people, or it was an unlimited viewing, but to actually sit and partake in the service, they would only sit out a certain amount of chairs. I was able to find, a service that met my needs, a church, and, everything that I wanted. Of course, we still, you had to wear a mask, you had to socially distance, and there was also an option of streaming live. So this particular, when I, met with the person that I planned my mother's funeral with, I was very specific on what I wanted and how I wanted things. And he helped to make that come true. But it was, at first I called various places, literally all day, every day. And I was, all over the place, all in different parts of the city and the townships. And they were all basically telling me the same thing. No, I'm sorry, there's a limit. We can only sit out a certain amount of chairs. So I did have a little more flexibility with the service that I provided, but everyone still had to wear masks. That was mandatory, and they had to socially distance. And again, those who couldn't make it had the option to view it through Facebook Live. Okay.
Your mother was a daycare worker, and she was well loved.
Yes, she was.
Doing to keep your mother's legacy alive?
Yes, my mother was a preschool teacher until she passed away. And my mother was had such a great relationship to a lot of the children that she taught over the 20 years that she'd been a preschool teacher. And one of the things that I decided to do to honor my mother's legacy was to start a scholarship fund in memory of my mom. And it's called the Wanda D. Clark Preschool Scholarship Fund. And we were able to, take donations from, various coworkers, clergy, people out in the community, family members that wanted to donate, just to give back to a preschool child for education expenses, tuition costs. And we were able to actually give two children. My goal was to only raise $500. I actually exceeded that goal and I raised $1,600. So I was able to actually help two children. And I hosted like a scholarship event where we actually gave those scholarships out, and I was able to meet the students, the recipients.
That's excellent. Now, how did you raise the funds?
Just by notification, word of mouth, advertising, text message, just talking about my mom, what happened and what we were trying to do, and talking about, discussing, this is what I wanted, sitting down and coming up with a long-term and short-term goal and just making it happen. Sitting down with various family members and really discussing and deciding, like, this is what I wanted to do to keep my mother's legacy alive. And so we just began to disseminate that information and put it out there, and people were just donating.
Yes. Now, will you keep this up? Will this go on every school year?
Absolutely, every year. And I asked the owner of the school, Miss Teller, if I could keep my mother's legacy alive and continue to do this. And she was, number one, thrilled that, I chose to do this at her school. And she's so supportive and agreeable with me. So this will be an annual event. Every year, we will begin raising funds, probably, like I would say, midsummer. We'll begin collecting and just putting the information out there. Hey, it's, that time again. And we'll, as the years go on, we're going to come up with more creative processes of, maybe backpack giveaways or, something out in the community where, we can just draw people in, because it is for a good school. It's preschool education. So it's for a good cause.
That's great. How long did your mom work at that daycare?
She worked at Little Einstein's daycare for 9 years.
Wow. Okay. So is there a way that people can give to this scholarship fund? If so, please share your information or how they can get in contact with you to give a donation. Sure.
I actually have a Cash App specifically set up for the scholarship that I can actually provide or type in, but it's, Wanda Clark, Wanda Clark's Preschool Donate, and I can actually give the specific Cash App, but we set up a Cash App specifically for the scholarship fund so that all funds will go there, and, they're dispersed to the students. So.
How hard is it for you to make it through each day without your mom physically being there with you? Because I know she's in your heart.
The struggle.
How hard is it for her not physically being there for you, or for you not to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, Mom? How hard is it for you?
It's extremely hard. Every day it's a struggle for me because I think of my mom every day. Every day, every morning, I started my morning out with calling my mother. I would talk to her early in the morning. We both got up early to go to work. And, I would start my day off talking to my mom. A lot of the times I would call her as she was opening up the school, and I would talk to her around our lunch break. I would talk to her at the end of the day, when I'm off work. She always got off work before I did, but I would talk to her as the day end as well. So it's extremely hard because I went from talking to a person so often to, sometimes forgetting like, hey, I can't, something comes up, I want to dial my mom or, discuss something with her, and I really can't. And so it's difficult. This is like the first birthday that I'm celebrating without my mom, and I've never had a birthday celebration that my mother didn't participate in.
Right.
So it's a struggle. It's very hard, but I'm also fortunate that I have I have a loving, supportive family and community, clergy, children, extended family, and relatives that care about me, and those that just consistently check in. I have some loved ones that constantly check in with me, that have been checking in with me ever since my mom has been hospitalized, up until she, was deceased. And so that's helpful. People continue to just kind of like check in with me, but it's difficult. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah. So for those viewers, Keisha is like a cousin to me, and Auntie Wanda is family. So this hurt. COVID has changed so many lives. And Keisha, I thank you so much for sharing your story. I love you. I will
I
continue
love you
to
too.
pray for you, and we'll get through this together. It will not get easier, and I don't have any words that can make you feel better. But just know I love you and that you're always in my thoughts and in my prayers. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me today. Please continue to wear your mask if you are vaccinated and even if you are not vaccinated. We have to stay safe for the people within our family. I choose to wear my mask to stay safe for my two beautiful grandchildren, Cameron and Kaylee, and for my unborn grandchild. I also choose to wear my mask to stay safe for my parents, Reverend Dr. John L. Payne and Patricia Payne. It is important that you stay safe and you do what is right, not to bring anything back to the children in your family, also to the patriarchs and the queen in your family. My prayer is that you stay safe.